Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and today we're going to be talking a lot about harmonics, and I'm going to teach you all why this note, A, one of the sounds of your mental imprisonment. Okay, so beginning with, I'm Aurora, and I have this information to share with you. We're talking about harmonics, which is I have been painting harmonics for many years, even though harmonics is often associated with sound. It is really an understanding of the interlocking or nested patterns of waves. So these can be light waves. These can also be sound waves. Anything that has a periodicity can have harmonics. So later in this broadcast, I'm even going to get into how our solar system has harmonics. Okay, very good. So first, let's talk about Hertz and the Schumann resonance. So this note right here, this is A, and since the 1940s, or roughly officially the 1950s, the A note on the symphonic concert scale has been tuned to 440 hertz. So hertz is a measurement of the frequency of this wavelength. I realize I just used two words without establishing their meaning. So if we use the analogy of ocean waves crashing on a beach, wavelength is the length of the overall size of the wave, how far a crest of that wave travels. And frequency is how many crests of a wave reach the beach in a period of time. So to use an example, we could have a very, very giant mile-long wave. The wavelength would be a mile, and we could have as its frequency one, like one wave might crash on the beach per minute. And now let's have a much shorter wavelength, a wavelength of only 5 feet. And that wave has the capacity to crash on the beach much faster. We can fit 10, 12, maybe even 25 little 5-foot waves can crash on the beach within 1 minute, within the amount of time it takes for one big long mile wave to crash on the beach. So this is the difference between frequency and wavelength. Now let's speak about the Schumann resonance. This is Earth's natural frequency. So Earth has a resonance. Earth is constantly vibrating, and the tone that she makes is around 8 hertz. And the tone is created by energy, such as lightning, but all sorts of energy reflecting and bouncing between the stratosphere and Earth's surface. So you could imagine that these are like two membranes or sheets with energy bouncing back and forth between them. And the frequency of that energy is at 8 hertz. So we live on Earth, and our natural body cycles, your brain waves, your heart functioning, and other aspects of your body and metabolism and consciousness are all tuned to 8 hertz, because this is where you come from, okay? Now, if we used 8 as the basis for the symphonic scale, that means that we would have the lowest C on our spectrum of notes being 8, and then we would multiply upward in order to get to the middle octave where the calculations come from. So like this is middle C, and then this is middle A, and I mentioned that A has been officially tuned to 440 hertz since about the 1940s. Now let's get more into this. This was not without controversy. Previous to that time period, A was tuned to 432 hertz. This is what it should be based upon the original note of C being 8 hertz. 432 hertz is what you get when you move upward in appropriate increments from 8. And in the world of classical music, for hundreds of years, 432 was the consistent worldwide tuning for A. And the reason for that is composers such as Verdi understood that tuning to 432 hertz was easier on opera singers' voices, that they could create the notes of the scale more easily. And of course, this makes sense if we understand that our physical body is an expression and is in tune with Earth herself. And the resonant cavities of both your larynx and your sinuses are shaped to create these sound waves and resonances that are at the frequency of 432. When we listen to music that is tuned to 432 hertz, there is a harmonic or comfortable pattern of communication between the left and right hemispheres of our brain. The corpus callosum is the bridge of neurological matter that connects the left and right hemispheres. And your left and right hemispheres, these would be like two aspects of your inner orchestra. And when we listen to music tuned to 432 hertz, these two aspects of your inner orchestra play in tune. There is not dissonance, there is harmony, all right? So in the 1940s, Hitler decreed that all music in Germany and all of the music that was made in order to glorify his Third Reich would be tuned to 440 hertz. And Hitler was very aware of the esoteric realm, the power of music, and the power of vibration. And he did that intentionally in order to control people's thoughts and emotions. Now let's get into music as a container for vibration and emotion. So we know that music can convey emotion. Even before there was sound in movies, simple silent films were played, and live pianists were there to accompany the narrative structure of the film, and they learned to play certain aspects of music, like in order to induce dread. Certain notes are played. Oh no, the damsel in distress is tied to the railroad tracks. We will play these notes, dun dun dun, that make you feel afraid. And then there's notes that make you feel hopeful, lifting, happy-sounding music. And, now we are so submerged within a culture that uses music to manipulate emotion and feelings. You might not notice it, but commercials have music on them. Any simple soundtrack can transform a neutral video clip. So it could be people sitting together on a couch, and if you play dread-inducing low-frequency music, dun dun dun, you think something bad is going to happen. And if you play sprightly, light-hearted major chords, then you feel like everything is okay, everything's going good. And these aspects of consciousness are being manipulated all the time, and it has to do with your genes. Your DNA vibrates. Your DNA is just like a bunch of guitar strings or violin or cello strings inside of you, and any stringed instrument vibrates sympathetically to the vibrations that are around it. So first of all, music can cause you to feel certain emotions. It can control and or transform your emotional landscape. So Hitler understood the power of music to control people's emotional landscape. And it goes way deeper than that. So even after the end of World War II, the worldwide standard for music was determined that A, the note of A, would be tuned to 440 hertz. And not everyone agreed with this. There were people in the symphonic music world who made very good arguments against it. However, I think it's obvious, if you have been listening to my radio broadcast for any amount of time now, as I've spoken about humans being unwitting users of a hacked operating system known as the human mind, that has been installed in order to reduce and limit human consciousness, and that human multidimensional and polygonal DNA has been flattened out into a flat or linear structure in order to keep humans limited in what they can feel and perceive and do. So when I say that the note of A at 440 is one of the bars on your cage, this is about all music that is made pretty much since 1950 being tuned slightly off from the harmonic resonance of the planet on which you stand and which gives you all of your basic nourishment. So I didn't used to know about all of this because I was a very intuitive musician, playing by ear and learning the songs that felt good or felt right to me, and I didn't understand why I preferred the octave that is the middle octave and the higher octaves. I always enjoyed playing those notes and playing those sounds and playing the melody, which mostly the melody is played with the right hand and the rhythm is played with the left hand going down towards the left of my keyboard. Brief pause. I used to think, I'm just a right-handed person who's a little bit lazy and I like to use my right hand more, and I didn't really like the sound of the notes that much going to the left of the center octave. And only recently, cut through learning, P.S., we are always all constantly in a state of learning, I have learned why. Because the note tuned to 440 does not have comfortable divisions by 3, 6, or 9. When we divide 440 by 3, and then multiply by 2. And this is how we go down a fifth in music. So this is like saying I'm starting at neutral, and then in order to reduce the hertz or the frequency of this note, I divide it by 3 and then I multiply by 2. And the problem is when I divide 440 by 3 and I multiply by 2, I get this note right here. It's 293.3 repeating. And our ear just hates to listen to the sound of endlessly repeating numbers. It's kind of like saying, we don't know exactly what this number is, it just kind of goes somewhere around there, instead of having an actual real target or destination where you can say, this is exactly where this number is. Like, here's another example of a note that just, a number that just keeps on going endlessly. Pi. It's just an endless number that keeps on going and going and going. That would be an uncomfortable note to hear. So if you check on the UCY homepage for Flying Rainbow Lasagna, you'll check out my Birth of a New Dimension Facebook page. And I have added all sorts of images from my artwork. You can click on almost any of those and see a good example of visual harmonics. If you look at my artwork, you will see there are not half circles. All of the circles are either whole circles, or they might be circles that touch each other tangentially. This is like if two circles are kissing but they don't overlap, or they might overlap at certain prescribed intervals, such as 1/2, making a Vesica Pisces, but they always fit within each other. So that's like saying, if I have a 6-inch circle, I know that I can fit comfortably within there a 4-inch and a 2-inch circle, and there's no extra hanging over the edge, or I could fit 2 3-inch circles in there. This is an example of harmonics. Let's say I have a 6-inch circle and I put a 3-inch circle and a 4-inch circle inside of there. You will say, Aurora, that does not look very pretty, because what I have is a 7-inch, circle. One of those circles would be hanging out of the edge. Like imagine a foot hanging over the edge of the bed. In musical harmonics, our ears don't like to hear the sound of your foot hanging over the edge of the bed. We like to hear the sound of circles that nest within each other in perfect proportions and are not cut off at uncomfortable increments. So unfortunately, when we tune the A note to 440, every time we have to divide by 3 when we are going down the scale, it makes these uncomfortable increments with repeating numbers that just keep going off and don't sound very nice to our ear. And all of these notes at the left-hand side of the keyboard are not in tune with Earth and the Schumann resonance and her natural harmonics. Of course, moving upward, the A's are in tune because in order to move upward along the scale, we multiply by 3 and divide by 2. And of course, if we are multiplying, it doesn't matter. We are getting whole number increments. Like if we multiply 1 times 3, we get 3. If we multiply 2 times 3, we get 6. We don't get something like 6.3 repeating. So that's why those notes all sound very nice and pretty to my ears, and probably to yours too. This has everything in the world to do with your consciousness and the lack of tune that human consciousness has been exposed to. If you have always been exposed to a world that is out of tune, you will calibrate to everything being out of tune, and you will expect that to be the way the world is, without understanding that that's actually incorrect. You have calibrated and set as your foundation and your baseline of understanding a system which is flawed, okay? And now I'm going to get into the flawed system of reality that we are consistently experiencing. So, usually in my class, Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, I wait to initiate students into the understanding of why your consciousness is oppressed, because I do not wish to release information in a way that is misguiding people. You can use truth to tell a lie. Yes, the most cunning liars use a little bit of truth in order to misrepresent what is actually going on. So I've used this before. You can take any factual statement, but use it in a way that, through context, implies something that is not actually true. Well, I would say that the entire incarnational or reincarnational system as it stands on Earth is out of tune, all right? And I've been telling people about this through Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, Lesson 18 of Level 1, which is all about galactic history. And as I said, it is something that I usually wait to initiate people into because in order to properly represent the truth, we need context. Simply diving into the understanding of the oppressive non-terrestrial and extra-dimensional consciousnesses that have been negatively impacting humanity is not necessarily the most efficacious way to start. I usually start with unconditional love. Because it takes a lot of unconditional love, you need to have a firm stance or foundation to be able to withstand some of these realizations about Earth human history and Earth culture and even the workings of your own mind and perhaps the way that family members and people in your own life are treating you. So I'm breaking it to you gently, the concept that humanity is not in control of its own mind, that humanity did not incept the human mind, that humanity has it foisted upon you in infancy without your choice or without much choice, and that it is a distorted or hacked operating system. So just like your whole life, you've been listening to music that is out of tune. I'm presuming that everyone who is listening to this broadcast was born after 1940. However, I have a dear old Aunt Sylvia who's over 100. She actually comes from an era where she would have listened to music tuned at 432 hertz. Although, of course, this was before the invention, before the great availability, rather, of recorded music. So even though she was alive during that era, she probably was not exposed to music very much because music was more of a luxury then. It was something that people exposed themselves to intentionally, like having a treat, as opposed to this time and era where music is everywhere and music is like the idea of elevator music, okay? The idea of music that is constantly in the background, that is not very good, and that is there to anesthetize your consciousness. Wow, I just said a whole lot about this culture. This culture went in under 100 years from music being something that is like a food or a nourishment for your ears that was treated as like a Eucharist, like something special that you eat and that bathes your presence in divine uplifting feelings. And we have dumbed it down to now unpleasant sounds that are made to be in the background and slightly distract your consciousness. That's the definition of elevator music. Elevator music is not supposed to be music that you pay attention to, that you like, that you focus on, that you play intentionally. It's just supposed to be there in the background. Okay, I hope that you're beginning to understand that creating music that reduces human awareness and makes it harder to be conscious and awake is not originating from humans. And when we look at the world of pop culture and the music that is created in the pop world, all of that music, which is hugely subsidized, is the antithesis of raising consciousness. It is for keeping people asleep. And what do I mean by hugely subsidized? I mean that there are corporate entities that help certain musicians to promote their music, with the caveat that the music cannot be uplifting to human consciousness. Of course not. Why would it be? If I wanted, if my intention was to uplift humans, I would not create a system for their degradation and control of their mentality, which is what we have around us right now. Brief pause. This world was intended and it was set up to be a university of the universe, a forum for learning, a place where you could come and experience the interplay of all forces and particles and consciousness. What do I mean by that? If you look at the flying rainbow lasagna, and at this point, if you were in my studio, I would pick up an actual flying rainbow lasagna and show it to you and gesture to it. So sometimes it is challenging to be on the radio. But if you look at a picture of the flying rainbow lasagna on the UCY homepage, you will see that the red area that goes around the edge, like the curly edge of a lasagna noodle, that is all connected together. But if you look at the orange area or the green area, those are little segments that are not connected. And the sculpture doesn't connect together again until you get back to the violet area. And this is a graphic representation of your chakras and of the way that the dimensions are graphically laid out, or let's say spatially arranged, even though space is not the right word for it. But what is next to what? And the answer is that the source is one place where all energy, consciousness, particles, and whatever exists can overlap and interact. And the only other place where that can happen is the physical realm. The physical realm is like the stage upon which all consciousness, ideas, forces, and particles can express themselves and interact. That's a very special place. I call it also the sandbox, kind of like if you ever went to kindergarten and then there's the sandbox where everybody gets to play. This is the sandbox. It's a free-for-all. Anybody can get in the sandbox and play, and anybody can do whatever they want. So we exist in this context where some of the older kids on the playground have created a system for domination and control. And this is what the tuning is all about. All right? The tuning of most of the music of the later half of the 20th century has been designed to diminish your consciousness and keep you out of tune with the natural world and with higher consciousness. And in terms of the feedback loop of the universe of consciousness, we are intended to be here in the physical realm in order to learn. This is a refinery of consciousness, and you learn by getting immediate and accurate feedback on your actions and your thoughts and your energy emanations. So to use the example of a dog, a puppy who is being trained, if the puppy makes a mess and you tell them right away, no, bad dog, don't do that, the puppy can make the connection. If you come home after 8 hours and the puppy made a mess in the morning and you only find it after the whole day, you bring them to the mess and you say, no, don't do this, they don't understand. Because to them, a whole day has gone by, and dogs don't have short-term memory in the way and continuity of consciousness in the way that humans do. Now I'm going to relate this to your existence, okay? So you are having an experience within this corporeal lifetime. And let's say, according to quote-unquote, karma and the laws of karma, something bad happens to you, like a car accident, or you get a disease, or, somebody in your family dies. And that is the universe saying to you, naughty, naughty, you shouldn't make a mess in the house. Except the behavior that it is connected to could be from another lifetime, could be from eons ago. Because of lack of continuity of consciousness, the controllers of humanity have made it almost impossible for people to learn about the consequences of their actions. There's more, because some people who do negative consequences, or who perform actions or thoughts that have negative consequences, are able to avoid or delay those consequences seemingly interminably. And therefore, those are like dogs. Imagine if you pooped all over the house and your owner never came home and never found the poop. Then it means that you would be able to act with impunity, thinking, I'm the best dog ever. And this is what some consciousnesses have done. Some consciousnesses have avoided going back to source by occupying the interstice, the membrane. I call it the membrane of death. It is the flowing membrane of consciousness beyond which you cannot penetrate. It is energy that is moving like perpendicular or like a cross current that you cannot get through. When you enter into it, it unmakes you. And there are some consciousnesses, lower vibrational, service to self, ego residue, that refuse to be washed away. I call them either the adipose tissue of the universe, kind of like fatty deposits that don't want to be stubborn fatty deposits of cellulite that refuse to be exorcised away, or they're also like arterial blockages. These consciousnesses that do not wish to learn, as a result of their actions and their behaviors while in the corporeal realm, they are like blockages of the flow of consciousness energy throughout the entity of the cosmos. And when you have an individual, like if you have a block in your artery, that means you can't get blood where it needs to go. And if the organism has a block in its flow of consciousness, that means consciousness or awareness or light cannot flow where it needs to go. So I am bringing this all up in order to tell you that you, humanity, as puppy dogs, have had a very difficult time being trained. People try to make sense of their life. People are not stupid. People are trying to make sense of their life, but they are working within a context that does not have consistent rules. It's like if you try to learn a language, but they're constantly changing the grammar. We look around the world and we see some people who do not deserve to have rewards and good things and comfort have rewards and good things and comfort. And some people are working very hard and they're experiencing lives of deprivation or disease or sorrow. And clearly, if it were a perfect feedback machine of the cosmos, people who are sending out goodness and positivity should be receiving that back, should be having that reflected back. And people who are sending out negativity or who are desiring to control others or to steal from others get their behavior reflected back to them and learn that it is inefficacious to act as they do. So let's talk about a being who has avoided facing the music and the consequences of their action for eons, like thousands of years. There are these beings that have done that, and they're sitting at the top of the heap. If you can think about like the Rockefellers in the corporeal realm, who over generations have amassed, treasures and fortunes, and now sit on top of big bank accounts. If you could imagine beings in the non-physical realm who have amassed large energetic bank accounts and who never faced the music. They never learned that lying, stealing, and going against boundaries or against sovereignty, which is what we would describe as rape. Anytime you set a boundary, you say, you're not allowed to do this, and someone does it anyway, that is a form of rape. And what has been done to human conscious awareness has been a form of mind and energy rape for such a long time that humans can't remember any other way of being. More bars on the cage. These are when you don't even have anything proper to compare it to. So, we are entering an era where things are about to change. Brief pause. That's why I'm bringing this up. For a very long time, these extra-dimensional, non-earthly entities have been making it difficult for humanity to learn. And I have already stated that the purpose of this universal or cosmic refinery of consciousness is that consciousness can learn about itself. So we have these beings that are like farmers of consciousness or farmers of energy that are changing the way that crops grow or consciousness grows because they want to farm consciousness for certain qualities of energy. And those qualities of energy we would call lower vibrational or negative. These entities like to eat things, consciousness energy, that is on the frequency of fear and negativity and anxiety. Those are all emotional vibrations, first of all, and those are all vibrations that you emanate and that also resonate harmonically with aspects of your genes. All right, so remember, your DNA is like a stringed instrument, and different notes can have an effect on your feelings. And when you hear a note, it can affect your strings. This means, first of all, according to human neurology, we have neurons that are called mirroring neurons. And this goes all throughout the primate and mammalian world. When you see someone making a facial expression, if it is happy or if it is sad, you mirror those feelings inside of you. This happens in the primate world, like monkeys, little baby monkeys, and this happens in the human world. You learned this at a very young age and probably embodied it so wholeheartedly that you did not consciously understand it. However, I will tell you that this resonance is a big part of human socialization. Someone comes up to you and they're so happy and they're smiling, and before they even open their mouth, like you turn to them expecting good, happy news, right? And someone comes up to you and their face is sad, or they look troubled, or you sense, some disturbance in them, and you give them a facial expression. If someone came up to you frowning or with a facial expression of distress, and you turned to them and you beamed a sunny smile, without any worries at all, they would think that you were either lobotomized or perhaps on the spectrum of autism, that you could not perceive emotion properly and make an appropriate response. What we consider to be appropriate emotional response has everything to do with these sympathetic vibrations and mirroring neurons. So we see someone else who is in distress, and we make a distressed face that says, I feel distress at your distress, tell me what's going on. And this is just basic aspects of human culture. So this is part of the concept of, your vibrations are always affecting others, and you are always being affected by others. If you have DNA and you have consciousness, you live in the corporeal realm, you are constantly emanating. You are constantly vibrating, whether you are aware of it or not. So there's a lot of people that are unconscious. They are constantly emanating their unconscious, unorganized vibrations. When I used to visit New York City, I felt like I was surrounded by a sea of uncultivated, unconscious people that were just emanating their vibrations. And without, of course, it's like this. It's like if you are deaf and you're constantly making noises or singing, and first of all, you cannot tell if you're singing in a pleasant way, and it takes someone else who actually can hear to even tell you, like, hey, you're constantly making these vibrations. And to be a person with hearing submerged amidst the sonic exudations of people who are deaf is unpleasant. And this is why Sasquatch never visits the big city. Okay, Sasquatch or Yeti, these are wonderful, highly sophisticated, telepathic, hominid creatures that also live on the surface of Earth. But the reason why you do not interact with them as humans, and Sasquatch stays far away from any human encampments or large, gatherings of uncontrolled humans, is because Sasquatch, they not only are like people who can hear, they are music aficionados. They like to listen to minds that are in perfect tune. Their whole world, their Sasquatch culture, is about creating pleasant, mental, harmonic tunes and sharing them with other people. And to them, to hear the disharmony that is coming telepathically out of urban centers like New York City or San Francisco, they run in the opposite direction. It is a mental cacophony or an energetic cacophony, and definitely not pleasant to listen to. So now we are into a new time. We are heading into a new era. So first of all, those oppressors of human consciousness who have, for many thousands of years, prevented humans from being able to learn properly, these people are getting kicked off the planet or literally removed from the system. And the reason for that is, if you could say we are like a garden of consciousness, we are supposed to be growing flowers that are very different than what we are currently growing. We're supposed to be growing flowers and making pollen and nectar out of our beautiful flowers. And really, before your consciousness can even grow to the point of making a flower, it is being chopped down, like mowed down by a giant lawn mower of consciousness. And your little flower can't even stick its head up before it gets chopped down. And this was not the intention of the cosmos, or the creator, when, let's say, corporeal and dense bodies were created. This was meant to be, as I said, a schoolhouse or a university of the universe, where all of the forces and consciousness and particles could come out and play and learn from one another. And it has been degraded, and the world has been distorted to the point where what you send out does not come back to you in an undistorted way. Instead of being inside of a world of mirrors, you're inside of a fun house that's filled with curved or distorted mirrors. And when you send, like, this is what is supposed to happen. When you send out goodness, or you send out something with good intention, that is supposed to be reflected back to you. And yet, as I've said before, we all can see people's examples in their lives of good people sending out goodness, praying and sending out good intention, and yet receiving negative feedback in their life experiences. So some people just throw up their hands in the air and they say, well, life isn't fair, and God doesn't exist, and it's all a giant, meaningless crap bucket. You know, that a lot of people give up hope, and they look at the world, like through the eyes of objective materialism, as really a meaningless or chaotic just backdrop of misery. And that is not what the world was created with. The intention for this creation was. Certainly not. So those beings who feel that way are like dogs who are like, I get beaten all the time and I don't know why. And now, so this comes down to consciousness. What is happening in the hyperspace realm? Okay, so there's the earthly realm and the world of mundane activity and the world of, corporeal existence. And then there's the hyperspace realm, which is populated by both extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional entities of consciousness, some of whom have never lived within a physical form, some of whom have, and they have transcended. So if you've lived in the physical and then you have been refined and your consciousness has then exited the physical, you're what we would call an ascended master. And beings have had that experience on all sorts of different planets and in all sorts of different containers. So not all ascended masters look like humanoids from Earth's surface, but they might look similar or they might look completely otherworldly. And there are beings, of course, whom have never been incarnated and have never felt what it feels like or the difficulties of being in this level of dimension. And being in this level of dimension is intended to be like an opportunity, not a burden. It's supposed to be like, wow, I get to go to school, not, oh no, I have to go to school. And the feeling of like, oh no, I have to go to school, this has been because largely once you get into the experience of being incarnated in the dense realm, you're then stuck and unable to choose your avenue of exit or next incarnation. So when I draw these time vortexes all the time, if you click on any of the pages from my Birth of a New Dimension Facebook page, you'll see pictures. It looks like a vortex with lines, and one of the lines is infinitely long. And that line is, I call it the path of least likelihood. It is the timeline upon which each one of us can become an ascended master. So each one of us has a panoply of possibilities, and of all the different timelines, some of them are totally not bringing you to infinity. They bring you to the membrane of death. They are roads that dead end. There's only one road that doesn't have a dead end. That is part of the endless loop of consciousness, traveling away from source and then back to source. And this would be the path of least likelihood, the path that leads us out of this incarnation and into the next level of refinement. And I've also likened the experience of going through these multiple iterations. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure novel. If you choose this, turn to page 23. If you choose this, turn to page 16. And every single one of those thoughts will lead you to the membrane of death, except for certain crucial decisions and thoughts and beliefs, which will actually bring you out of the membrane of death and continue your consciousness towards infinity. So the whole idea is you're here within this time vortex, having experiences and then getting positive or negative feedback. Hey, did it work? Did I get closer to being an ascended master? Or did I get further away from the decisions and choices and activities that I made during my day, during my life? And if you were a puppy and this were a feedback loop that was not distorted, then you would get immediate feedback on whether you did the right thing. Should I make a poop in the middle of the floor? No, that's not what I should do, because then my owner will hit me. So what should I do instead? I should, go to the door, or, whatever's the right thing to do. And then when you do that and you get praise, you do it again. So for most humans and most human consciousness, you've been unable to tell whether you did the right thing or not. You're wondering, did I do the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Did I believe the right thing? Everybody wants to know, am I going to go to heaven? Did I do the right thing? You know something? You should have feedback during your life about whether you are going to, quote unquote, go to heaven. You should not have to wait until you're deaf to have, if you were a puppy, your owner, quote unquote, tell you, yeah, and P.S., all those times you pooped on the floor, that was wrong, and so now you're not going to go to heaven. That, of course, is totally wrong. And also the programming of heaven and hell, and most of the programming of what is called the Abrahamic religions, but basically Judeo-Christianity with a little bit of Islam thrown in there, that these religions are more bars on the cage of the belief system, inherently programmed limitations that prevent you from rising higher. So even the idea of an externalized authority figure who will tell you at the end of your life whether you're good enough to ascend or go to the next level of consciousness is totally erroneous. We are now cleaning out these negative interlopers of consciousness. The older kids on the playground who have been oppressing the younger kids. If you're, a first grader and you have fourth graders bullying you and stealing your lunch money, and the fourth graders are even saying that they're the teachers, they're the principal, they run the school, and they're giving you noogies. And that's not right. And I'm here to tell you that they're only fourth graders, they're not in charge of the school, and they're not allowed to give you noogies anymore. Because just like in school, if there's an atmosphere of bullying, it makes it very difficult to learn. When you are being bullied, you don't think about 1 + 1 = 2 or, how to conjugate verbs. You think about, how do I not get my head flushed down the toilet by the bully, during recess or whatever. So humans are supposed to be here in the University of the Universe, learning about things like 1 + 1 = 2, or how to, make a recipe, or how electricity works. But you can't even focus on your studies because you are dealing with the constant consciousness bullying of these slightly more advanced, sophisticated cultures. And these are, yes, non-terrestrial cultures. Older kids on the playground. Human Earth culture. You're like the little kindergartners. And then there are more sophisticated cultures that are just a little bit older. Not that much older. They're not grown-ups. If they were grown-ups, they would have absolutely no interest or desire to oppress little kids on the school playground. If you're a grown-up, you have no interest or desire to go to the playground and shake down kindergartners for their lunch money. You have bigger fish to fry. You have more interesting things to do. So the beings that have been diminishing Earth surface human culture and your consciousness through, music that's not tuned properly, and genetically modified food, and geoengineering, and all sorts of other toxic dumping throughout the world, Fukushima, those beings are the interlopers, slightly older children on the playground who are here to diminish your consciousness and feed off of your negativity, and they have been preventing you from really doing your lessons in life. And the principal of the school is now putting their foot down and saying, no more of this. I'm not having any more bullying. This is the change on the surface of Earth right now. This is good. I'm telling you, people, this is very good. Because for more than 10,000 years, human consciousness on the surface of Earth has been bullied and limited and diminished. And now the principal is making sure that the bullies are being prevented from their negative behavior so that we have a real atmosphere of learning. We are now on Earth and in this realm going to finally have a real atmosphere for learning where it's an undistorted context and what you send out does come back to you in an undistorted way, and you can actually tell if you are singing the correct note. When professional singers sing on stage, you might see that they're wearing these very cunningly designed earpieces, and that's so that they can hear themselves while they are singing. It's very difficult to tell if you're doing the right note as a musician if you can't even hear yourself. And this is what most people experiencing life as a human on Earth are experiencing right now. You make choices about your life, you make life decisions, and do things with your consciousness, and because you're living within a realm or a context that is so distorted, the feedback is worthless. You have no idea whether you've actually done or said or consumed the right thing. And now this is all changing. So you can also understand, if you lived in a realm where you were deaf or you couldn't have earpieces and hear your own voice as you're singing, you would have to listen to someone else. You would have to have an external authority figure who either gives you the thumbs up or the thumbs down and says, yes, you're hitting the right note, or thumbs down and a frown, no, you sound terrible. And that is the idea of having a lord or an externalized God that you have to ask permission for whatever you want or what you want to do, and who is judging your behavior and who determines whether or not you get into heaven at the end of your existence. That is not a workable system. And the idea of that system is a false idea that has been foisted upon humanity like a lot of other things. So you are supposed to, or were designed to have, internal guidance, GPS, your God positioning system. No external deity telling you what to do. An internal, innate connection to the divine that tells you, think this, go over here, do this, expose yourself to this, come here and have an experience of this. If we really lived in an unfettered teaching system or a realm for learning, the universe should be able to point you in the right direction. Imagine being given just the right book that you need. Hey, read this. Or being sent just the right computer program so you can learn to play the piano. Or being sent just the right healing substance. Maybe you need turkey tail mushrooms in order to heal, or chaga mushrooms. Imagine that everything that is sent to you, instead of being random or negative and designed to distract you, imagine if the things that are being sent to you are actually the things that are intended to go to you and that have a meaning and a significance, as opposed to a random, chaotic setup, which is the way that things have appeared for so long because of the interlopers, the kids in the sandbox, preventing you from really being able to attend to your studies. So now I'm happy to give you this information because it's finally time to study. Maybe children in the United States don't like going to school, but in places where education is hard to come by, children love to go to school. They're like, wow, I finally get to go to school and learn to read, and I don't have to be a subsistence farmer and, live in deep poverty anymore. I can actually be something and do something. So the opportunity to learn is a good thing. This is not like, oh no, more work to do. This is like, hooray, because your life is going to get easier. Your existence is going to get easier. And this is very brief because I know I'm at the end of this recording, but it's a one-room schoolhouse of the universe, but not everybody is ready to graduate. So, when we talk about ascension, we are talking about everybody who has grown the consciousness muscles necessary to flap their wings and fly to the next dimension or next level of experience. All of those beings will be able to level up and go to the next level of refinement. But let's say you've been slogging around in incarnational circles and you still haven't figured out why you're being beaten with the newspaper, where you should poop, why you shouldn't poop in the house. I'm talking about you as a little puppy who doesn't understand the consequences of actions. And basically we're talking about the consequences of unloving actions. There are a lot of people in the world. They might be Hollywood stars. They might have a lot of money and seemingly all of the trappings of success, but their interpersonal experiences have been lack of integrity. They've done things to other people that they're not proud of. And the world that we're going into is a world where everything shows. Like, if you walk around naked all the time, all of your bumps show. You're not wearing a girdle. You can't suck in your stomach or, lift up your breasts artificially. It all shows. So people who seem to have it all because they have a house or a lot of money or a big career, but they haven't actually cultivated their heart and their consciousness and what we would call unconditional love and their connection to the divine. Those people, it's not that they're bad or unworthy. They haven't done the work. They are not ready to fly on wings of consciousness and perform the soul migration. So, a one-room schoolhouse of consciousness for them is available. No one, it's like this whole idea of punishment and the Christian literalist world where some people are gonna go to heaven, but some people are gonna be left behind to burn in hell. No. It is so different. When you go to heaven, it means you finally get an opportunity to learn. And we are all going to go to heaven. We are all going to get an opportunity to learn in an unfettered way. So mote it be, and thank you so much for joining me here on Birth of a New Dimension.